some acid, some sweetness, and some richness.
This is what you eat, but this is where it grows.
Have a sniff of that.
That's a beautiful piece of beef. Nicely aged, bit of fat on there.
We're making booze and we're having a hell of a good time.
I sit between a grower and a chef.
Is this a food? Is it a medicine?
It's like discovering colour TV after years of watching black and white.
Hello, I'm Pip Courtney. Welcome to another edition of A Taste of Landline, where we take a special look at the food we eat and, for a change of pace, the disappearing world of the Deb.
Gentlemen, take your partners for the Loose Eagle Waltz.
It's actually very entertaining to meet the old folks and learn how their time was, how they danced.
Because it's really fun just being presented to the community and being shown as a young lady now, not as a kid.
Fancy restaurants usually serve up fancy vegetables, rare and often micro versions of what you'd normally find in the supermarket. So where does this weird and wonderful produce come from? Prue Adams reports.
While the rest of us are sleeping, the wholesale fruit and vegetable market in Adelaide's northern suburbs is wide awake. The growers and agents are preparing to deliver fresh produce all over the state. Some time ago, wholesaler Prue Abbott realised dealing with the usual pineapples and potatoes would barely make ends meet. So he and his wife Margie branched out into something quite different.
Definitely a hole in the market, and we wanted to get something different on their plate.
So as dawn breaks, a van is loaded with yuzu, micro herbs and other things you've probably never heard of, bound for some of South Australia's best restaurants. A business decision made a decade ago when Mrs Abbott asked a well-regarded chef what he wanted from a produce supplier.
He said, I'm an artist and I've got not enough paint for my palette. So for me, that meant there was a big hole in innovative produce in South Australia.
Now this self-confessed foodie sources interesting seed from here and overseas and commissions growers to germinate it. She also liaises with top chefs and writes a newsletter to keep them up to date on what's in stock.
I'm the luckiest girl in the world. I do a job I absolutely love and I sit between two passionate people. I sit between a grower and a chef. And how can you not be passionate when you're working with people like that?
Now, unless you're into fine dining, you might not know what's being served up. So here's the sort of thing we're talking about. A selection of beautifully presented meals, complete with delicately placed edible flowers, tiny, tasty leaves, and miniature vegetables.
So we've got these great little heirloom carrots here I get off Margie, and they just have a beautiful sweet flavour, and being little petite things they are, they also look really good on the plate.
In his restaurant in the Barossa Valley, Peter Clark used to find it difficult to get hold of produce that would give him the edge over his cooking competition.
A few years ago I wanted to use pomelo and I found it really hard to get, and Margie did source it for me, but it was from overseas or up north, and I couldn't understand why we couldn't grow it in this state.
He said, Margie, I need pomelos. Now everyone will go, oh, Margie, pomelos are just a stock standard these days. 8 years ago they weren't anywhere to be seen in the mainstream. So I started digging, and that's what I do. I love to dig until I find an answer.
Her digging led here, to Waikerie in the Riverland, where the Arnold family has been growing and picking pomelos for almost 20 years. With a minimal market in Adelaide, most of their crop was going to Melbourne, where the larger Asian population was more familiar with the gentle giant of citrus. Now, with Margie Abbott as the go-between, the Arnolds are able to supply local chefs with the fruit.
It's always good, I suppose, though, to have those other avenues to actually move the product. We rely on one buyer, we're sort of very exposed. That's where broadening it out gives us those it gives us better opportunities for the product.
So what we've got here is, it's like a grapefruit, like a big grapefruit, and lots of pith on it. And it gives the salad that we're going to put in a really cleansing flavour and a little bit of texture in there.
The Barossa chef still uses the Riverland pomelos and any other new produce he can get his hands on. From deep purple potatoes to colourful carrots to cute corn cobs and little leaves with a variety of colours and tastes. Chefs are prepared to pay for something that will wow their customers.
Yes, they're glamour leaves, they are. We'll call them.
And don't they look like it too?
Yeah, they're actually around about $50 a kilo for us to buy, but they're just stunning. And most of these leaves, the seed is actually sourced from overseas, and some of the seed can be up to $1,500 or more a kilo.
These glamour leaves were sourced from a grower who has a farm on, of all places, the Northern Beaches area of Sydney. It's a property where a crop of red elk is harvested with scissors and where women delicately pluck edible flowers like linaria and vintage pansies, so the pretty petals can later grace a plate.
What's trend at the moment, we've got a woodland sorrel that we got the seed from England. It's growing wild in the woodlands of England, like the forest areas. We've managed to germinate that. That's been a huge hit in the marketplace.
Tony Mann's company is one of the largest salad providers in the marketplace. A few years ago, the former chef embarked on a side business to supply more exotic fare.
OK, so we've got baby pencil leeks. We've got a bit of a secret way that we're growing these at the moment. Unfortunately, I can't disclose that. We've also got a Japanese blush turnip. Also, we have an array of fresh flowers that we're growing here, even a chocolate ball bean heirloom flower. It's something that you actually use in salads. It's been used in the fine dining restaurants.
They look delicate, and they are. Cold, wet weather lends itself to mildew. The heat wilts everything, and when plate-popping perfection is the aim, there's no room for error.
We started with the baby vegetables, the Japanese salad turnip. I tasted it when I was in England from a seed company. I was blown away. Then we come across the blush turnip, which is also a salad turnip, and that has gone helter-skelter. We basically can't produce enough at the moment.
So that's the excuse.
Yeah, so what we've got here is prawn and crab with the pomelo, bean shoots and chilli.
The chef and the farmer sometimes speak different languages. The person who cooks fresh produce often knows little of what goes into growing food. And the farmer, geographically remote, doesn't get to try his handiwork at its taste-tempting best. But grower and chef are essentially in the same business, pleasing the consumer.
OK, here we have some grilled South Australian prawns with yuzu and a bit of blood lime, so hope you enjoy.
The debutante ball was once a popular ritual in Australian country life. Today, it's a struggle to keep that tradition alive. But as I found out in one tiny country hall, the community is not giving up. In a tin hall in the middle of a paddock on Queensland's Darling Downs, a decades-old tradition is about to unfold. Making your debut is a chance to feel like a princess for a night. In the UK, debutante balls were held so aristocrats could present their daughters, or new adults, to society. But Australia democratised this rite of passage, so tonight's venue is not a palace, but a corrugated iron hall in a paddock. And the girls won't be presented to court, but to their local community, though royalty will be looking on.
Does it feel better? Is that all right?
With their mum's help, Emily Akers and Maddie Bryant will be transformed from girls into young ladies.
Okay, congratulations. Congratulations.
We don't even get mentioned. What's the best thing about the deb ball?
Maybe just being presented to the community and being shown as a young lady now, not as a kid.
But Maddie and Emily are exceptions. While most teenage girls are keen to go to their school formal, they're not so keen on being a Deb.
What do the other girls at school say about Deb balls?
I don't think they're really into them. Yeah.
Why not?
I don't think it's their cup of tea.
Emily and Maddie's partners, Charlie and Connor, say some of their mates don't get it.
Oh, they're not really that interested in dancing anymore, doing the old time dance.
It's actually very entertaining to meet the old folks and learn how their time was, how they danced.
Come on in. How you going, Adrian?
Not too bad. Good too.
At Gowrie Little Plain, the Deb Balls format has been unchanged for decades. There's no alcohol, the dances are from the board of Old Faithfuls, and supper is homemade sandwiches and cakes. But the days when more than 300 came are gone. So tonight's ball might be the last.
Right.
That was very much on the mind of Merle Webber, who earlier in the day was in the kitchen helping prepare supper. She loves the Deb Ball and pretty much oversees the night.
We got 5 Debs. Oh, we got 5, yeah. Oh, gee, that's just great. Nobody told me that.
Retired dairy farmers Merle and husband Eric have helped run the ball for decades.
It's one of the main events for the year.
They're sad the popularity of Deb Balls in their area has faded.
In the old days, it was very important. But these days, no, we don't see them. Nobody comes.
Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think it's the same everywhere these days, isn't it? They just go to the bigger towns and we don't have the grog.
Hello there.
But maybe the community sensed the ball and the hall needed support.
Thanks a lot.
There's a strong turnout tonight.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A big welcome to Gowrie Little Plain. Gentlemen, take your partners for the Loose Eagle Waltz.
The 5 Debs trod the famously fast dance floor, and the Deb traditions rolled out just as Merle wanted. With flower girls and page boys, the walk down the carpet, a chat with the judges, and the presentation of 5 young ladies to the community.
Ladies and gentlemen, supper will now be served.
Gowrie Little Plain's supper is legendary for Merle's sandwiches and the tea boys. You see, there's no supper room here, so guests are handed a cup from an iron basin and 4 tea boys pour the tea. The 5 Debs and their partners, well, they had a ball.
Yes, it was a great night.
What was the best part?
The dancing and mingling with the community.
Talk this could be the last saddened many.
It is a shame because it gives the girls the opportunity to get dressed up. It's their special night.
I think it's an opportunity for young people to learn to see themselves as someone special, to dress as someone special, to learn how to appreciate the company of a young man. And it's an old tradition that I actually do encourage very much.
Australia has an abundance of native seaweeds, and many of them are edible. But as Sean Murphy discovered, we've just begun to explore the potential of a seaweed food industry.
The ocean is the frontier of our future food production. The planet is 70% ocean, and if we're going to be increasing production anyway and becoming more efficient in production, that's the frontier that it's happening in globally, and Australia needs to join that trajectory.
Marine systems ecologist Dr. Pia Winberg wants Australia to engage with a $6 billion a year global seaweed industry.
We really don't know a lot about Australian seaweeds because just as we have unique gum trees, kangaroos and things on our continent, we have equally unique seaweeds.
Is this selection fairly typical?
These are some of the more common ones that people might be quite familiar with when they're walking around on our local beaches. Basically, we've got brown seaweeds, which people are more familiar with as kelp. And we've got green seaweeds, and things like sea lettuce are quite common in our shore that people know about as well. And then we've got red seaweeds, and this is the stunning Gracilaria. It's actually what agar is made from, and we've got plenty of species of this in Australia, and nobody's really cultivating it. Don't grow anywhere else in the world.
Pia Winberg has been working with Jared Ingersoll, a Sydney-based chef educator and sustainability consultant. They've been trying to come up with ways to integrate seaweed into the Australian diet.
Oh, it's fantastic. The challenge is to how do we understand these flavour profiles and try to broaden the market as far as the type of people who are going to be eating this food. A different application that I want to use is to use it to season beef, because it has that umami richness to it. So putting it with a steak, and using it in a really simple way by just combining it with salt and using it as a seasoning, it gives meat such a much greater depth of flavour and a real sort of intrigue to it. The fascinating thing about working with someone who has been looking at these foods in an academic and very scientific way is then I come along and go, yeah, but it smells like this, or it works good with onions, and you start to sort of have a different level of conversation. It's about how do we get people excited about putting it in their mouths.
Pia Winberg says there are big health benefits to eating more seaweed, and she's been experimenting with seaweed-flavoured noodles and other products.
We're getting a lot of the omega-3 now from fish oil capsules, but we're coming to peak fish oil as well. And where do the fish get their omega-3 from? It's from the algae and seaweeds at the bottom of the food chain. And if we really need to increase the amount of omega-3s in our diets, which in Australia we're very limited in, then we're going to have to look at what the sustainable sources of that are. Importantly, seaweeds are able, in animal studies, to deliver significant improvements in gut health and metabolism. So that means creating a gut and an environment where the good bacteria flourish and you can suppress the bad ones, and have an environment in your gut that improves your whole metabolic function in your body.
Research into seaweed gels could now lead to groundbreaking medical treatments. Professor Gordon Wallace and his team believe seaweed gels have untapped potential for treating conditions like arthritis, schizophrenia and cancer. Already they've been able to regenerate knee cartilage, injecting stem cells in a seaweed gel paste.
We really are just scratching the surface at the moment. It's exciting to think about the future, about how we might be able to extract specific biomaterials for specific applications.
From developing new ways to treat plant pathology to food products and breakthroughs in medical treatments, Pia Winberg says a world of opportunity is open to Australia and its seaweed.
And we need to work globally to do this, to share the knowledge, and I think there's a huge opportunity there for Australia.
It is the holy grail for foodies, raw cheese made from unpasteurised milk. In Tasmania, Fiona Breen looks at a relaxation of regulations, which is proving a hit with local cheesemakers.
Blue, camembert, brie, local and imported cheese. The choice appears endless, but not endless enough. A ban on most raw milk cheeses in Australia has frustrated foodies.
The flavour of raw milk cheese is like discovering colour TV after years of watching black and white.
Raw milk cheese enthusiast Will Studd believes pasteurisation or heating the milk knocks out flavour. The regulators like it because it's a quick and easy way of getting rid of nasty bacteria and guaranteeing food safety.
We started the change way back in around 1996. Food Standards Australia and New Zealand decided that they were going to ban the production and sale of all raw milk cheese, including Parmigiano Reggiano, and here we are almost 20 years later, and we can actually join the ranks of the rest of the world and enjoy raw milk cheeses without them being illegal, which is fantastic. It's certainly worth it.
Slowly, Food Standards Australia New Zealand has been relaxing the rules.
There is a lot of testing along the way. These are what we call verification tools, and that's to make sure that the pathogen or the bugs in the raw milk, which we know are there, are being controlled, and then when they appear in the final product, aren't going to present a food safety risk.
Cheesemaker Nick Haddo is already a step ahead of most. On Bruny Island, a ferry ride from mainland Tasmania, he's been making Australia's first raw milk cheese.
The milk is not heated, but the curd is cooked, even though we're talking really low temperatures, sort of 48 to 50 degrees. We hold that for about 10 minutes, and that also helps to dry out the curd, as well as...
And that's the curd in there?
That's right, that's the curd. And then after that, we're going to separate the curd from the whey, and that's when the really hard, fun work starts.
The cooking of the curd and the 6-month maturation of the C2 raw milk cheese reduces bacteria levels and keeps the regulators happy.
We only make raw milk cheese on 1, maybe 2 days a week. So we go through about 1,000, possibly 2,000 litres a week, and we make 13 of these out of a batch.
The rules around raw milk cheese production start here in the paddock. There's restrictions on feeding the cows silage or any grass sprayed with effluent. Then there's more checks and balances at the dairy around cleanliness. It's all about making sure the raw milk cheese process is free of any harmful bacteria right from the start. Dairy farmers Jan and Terry Lane aren't worried. They supply Nick Haddo with raw milk from their Whitehall dairy in the Derwent Valley, about 40 minutes west of Hobart. With a small herd of 80 Holstein Friesians, it's a hands-on operation.
We know them as individuals. I mean, working them ourselves, we know every cow.
Come on, girls. Rosie, come here. Come on.
It may be all too hard for cheesemaker Nicole Gilliver and her family. They run a small sheep farm and cheesery in Tasmania's Huon Valley and produce about 10 different types of sheep's milk cheese. They'd like to add a raw milk cheese to their repertoire.
We are still thinking about it, yeah. But for us, it's a question of how much is it going to cost? Not just in dollar terms, but in intellectual investment. So we would need to gain a much better scientific understanding. So all of this compounds the expense, and at the end of the day, we make a business decision as to whether or not we think we can actually cope with that within the way we function as a business.
As Fazance lifted the ban on some raw milk cheese production, they once again shut the door on the sale of raw milk.
The reason we haven't gone as far as permitting raw milk itself to be sold is that we do not believe that the process for managing the food safety aspects of that are sufficiently developed to give us the confidence that there wouldn't be foodborne illness.
Former food critic turned food producer Matthew Evans has his own dairy cows on his picturesque southern Tasmanian property. He worries that the ban on unpasteurised or raw milk is fuelling its appeal.
I'm one of these strange people. I actually think raw milk should be legalised for purchase, but I don't think anyone should buy it. And the reason I think it should be legalised is because at the moment the rules are forcing people who want to buy the product underground.
It's likely to be some time before the emotive issue of raw milk is solved. The ban won't be lifted anytime soon, and the black market for the product appears to be strong. Jan and Terry Lane are often approached.
We just have to say no, and we feel a bit sad about saying it, but we have to say no to them, and they understand, but they would like to be able to buy raw milk.
For now, they'll stick to supplying Nick Haddo. He's one of a small group of Australian cheesemakers now looking at expanding their raw milk cheese range.
I think that these changes don't necessarily throw the door wide open to raw milk cheese making. It's going to be harder for people to start making raw milk cheese, but at least now we get to do it.
Next Friday on A Taste of Landline, everything from the poshest of spice to ABBA. I'll see you then.